we're all quiet. It's funny because, you know, Facebook and Zoom have this like weird kind of delay between when you actually go live and yeah, so it's fun. So hey everybody, how's it going? We're live now. So I just wanted to say hello to my friends Meghla and Margaret, who are here from India Sourcing Network. Hey ladies.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good early morning from Singapore.
Super early. Yeah. So we're going to hang out today and we're going to talk about, you know, all of us source from different areas of the world. And there's a lot going on today and upcoming and just kind of the state of affairs. And, you know, I just got back from ASGTG last week and Prosper before that. And we've had a lot of conversations about what's happening in different places. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about what's happening on your side of the world, as well as just in your networks, what people are doing. And we'll talk, of course, about sourcing from India because we have to, because it's, yeah, duh. And then, you know, we'll hang out and see what's going on. So everyone who's watching here on the live, if you would like to join us on inside of the Zoom, you can go to sellerroundtable.com/live and you can join us in the Zoom. And I'm going to hit the record button and we're going to start recording the podcast. So without further ado, let's go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Amy Weiss, and Andy Arnott is out today. He's taking care of the kids, so he handled the podcast for me last week. I'm handling it for him this week, but we miss him because he's great. And we're here with my friends Meghla and Margaret from India Sourcing Network, and we're on episode 120, nice round number of the Seller Roundtable. And we're going to talk about some really interesting things today. We just want to talk about kind of the state of affairs right now. There's some crazy stuff going on across the world. There's just, you know, container shortages, and like the last shipping prices were like $30,000 for a container or more. And, you know, China handles a lot of the raw materials. So no matter where you source from, it's crazy. We're going to talk about sourcing from different areas of the country. We're going to talk about what are private label sellers going to do when they inevitably run out of inventory and can't afford more. When is all this stuff going to normalize? We're going to talk about, you know, how we're managing our businesses during this time. And so it's going to be a great conversation with ladies with just a wealth of knowledge from sourcing all over the world here. So ladies, thank you so much for being here. And I would love to just start with Meghla and just a quick introduction. Tell everybody a little bit about your background and where you're from and however much you want to tell us.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Amy, for inviting us. So my background is basically in the sourcing industry. I've been working in sourcing for over 20 years. I started way back in the year 2000 in India. Then I moved to the Philippines. I lived and worked in China for almost 10 years, and currently I'm in Singapore. And most of my career, I've worked for B2B sourcing platform called Global Sources. And about 3 years ago, I started my own venture trying to help Amazon and e-commerce sellers source products from India. And I started India Sourcing Trip, which was basically an 8-day trip to take Amazon sellers to India to source products. And of course, we couldn't do the trip in 2020, so we had to kind of pivot, and we started helping sellers source virtually. So then I joined forces with Margaret and her partner, Kevin, and the three of us launched India Sourcing Network earlier this year. And then last year, we also were doing virtual India Sourcing show, where we were inviting manufacturers from India to do live webinars inside of our group. And we've recently launched a workshop as well to help people source from India. So yeah, pretty exciting stuff.
That is awesome. And, you know, I met you in China at Global Sources in person for the first time. And, you know, you're just a wealth of knowledge. And I was so stoked to go to India with you and then COVID, what happened, right? That's what we all said. And then COVID, we've all said that. It's crazy. So great to have you here, Meghla. Thanks so much for being here. And Margaret, tell everybody a little bit about you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us, Amy. It's lovely to be here. Yeah, well, I suppose started all my career. I've worked in managed businesses. We've owned businesses, so I've sort of had a pretty sort of business orientated career. But in 2017, we started looking at doing some selling on Amazon, and started off with China, of course, and we're on our way to Canton to find some more products in October of that year. And we actually stopped off in Hong Kong and found a really, really great Indian supplier at the one of the fairs there. And look, the rest was history. We got to Canton and we went, what are we looking for here? We found our products. We're not, going to really look. So we spent a couple of days just moseying around Canton and went sightseeing for the rest of the week, and started sourcing from India. So we've actually sold out of our China products and started developing products from India. And to this day, I'm still got the same supplier, and we've sort of moved forward with that. But, in the meantime, of course, we met Meghla because we were sourcing from India. Somebody put us in contact with Meghla, and she said, come on our trip, which was the trip of a lifetime. People, you have got to get on the next trip. I mean, people say, how good is it? But until you've done it, I can't even explain it. I've never had even a holiday that's been that well organised, with the queen of organising herself, Meghla. It was just unreal, the trip. And look, we still talk about it, and it's funny, most of the people on that trip we still speak to regularly. We message each other for our birthdays. We've formed a little family, I think. So yeah, and from there, of course, well, the next trip was booked and paid for, and we were all heading off, and it got cancelled. So we started doing our viz shows, and we've just, what else can we do? Because it's, we thought, we'll be going in April, we'll be going, and it's just going on. So you've just got to keep pivoting. And I think, we've done well, and got the India sourcing network going. And hopefully, it's not as good as going to India, but it's a way for people to find products and move on. So yeah, I'm looking forward to, going to India next year, hopefully.
My fingers are crossed. They are. I know, people have been reaching out to me, and because the Canton Fair, I have a little China trip. It's not a big China trip, but a little one. And people have been reaching out and saying, Amy, are you going? And because the Canton Fair just recently said that they were going to do it in person. And I wrote an article for RD Express because, people were asking questions like, who's going and how do you, and I think what we didn't expect is that when Canton Fair announced, okay, they were going to do it in person, right, this time, I think that was right before we had the peak again of COVID numbers going back up again. And so, I think they announced that, and then everything kind of locked down. So, but there's a lot of restrictions. It's very hard. You would have to add at least 14 days onto the front end of your trip for, quarantine rules and stuff like that. And then, there's really no guarantee. Like, you have to have a specific vaccine that's approved by China. And then on the back end, there's some other kind of requirements too. There's no guarantee you could get out, right? It's just so we were like, no, I mean, if you want to go, here's the information on what you could do, but we won't be chartering a trip there. No. So how is it in India right now? Is it, I know that the numbers were kind of climbing recently, and they were kind of hitting their peak after us, right? So how is it going in India right now with the COVID situation?
Well, it is improving a little bit as of now. And a couple of months ago was pretty bad. Numbers were very high, and a lot of people were being affected, and there were lockdowns and everything. But now things are sort of improving. In fact, in Delhi, they've announced that they're going to be reopening schools later this month. So that's a really good sign. After almost a year, or maybe a year and a half, schools are going to reopen in Delhi. So that's a good sign. And the organizers of the Delhi Fair, which is the main export focused fair that we visit during the trip, they have recently, just a couple of days ago, announced that they're hosting the physical in-person fair in October. Again, I don't think too many people are going to be coming in from overseas. Like at Canton Fair, they're also expecting mostly domestic people to come to the fair. Yeah, I think so. The same for the Delhi Fair as well. They're probably expecting maybe if there are sourcing agents that represent buyers, or maybe some of the companies there have their own buying offices, so their representatives. So it's going to be mostly domestic and local people attending the fairs. But I think that's a really good sign that these fairs are happening. Canton Fair, Delhi Fair, Global Sources is also hosting their fair in Hong Kong in October. They usually do 3 fairs, but they've now compressed all of the 3 into one, so they're just doing one small fair. So yeah, hopefully this is a sign of good things to come next year.
Yeah, and I love that you pointed that out, because I think also in the US, things are starting to open back up again as well. I mean, I know we also had a trip planned to the Las Vegas Licensing Expo, and it kept getting moved and kept getting moved. And then same thing, traffic and conversions. A lot of people had tickets to that, and that kept getting moved. And now they're actually hosting and holding these conferences. So it is still a concern, right? You've got a big group of people in a very contagious virus right now. So, I know a lot of us went to Prosper and got COVID, myself included. Luckily, there weren't too many major cases, like nobody was, massively hospitalized or death, as far as I know, right? But it's still a concern. It's still, we still need to be careful, and but it's a promising thing. I think that, like you said, for domestically, things are starting to open back up, and people are getting out, and they're going and they're meeting, and yeah, I've really enjoyed the events, getting back out to some of the events again. It's been a nice time.
Also, in terms of manufacturing, we found that there hasn't been too much disruption this year for manufacturing. Of course, factories had to be closed down in case there was a case over there, or in case some cities were in lockdown, the factories had to be shut down entirely. But overall, what we found is that this year, suppliers were kind of keeping their factories open, but they were, following all the different types of procedures and safe distancing and all of those things. Whereas last year, when there was a lockdown, there was a complete lockdown, like all factories were completely shut down and the whole country shut down for almost a month. But this time, the government has been a bit more cautious about, announcing a nationwide complete lockdown. So they've allowed industries and offices to function. And so we found that most people, there have been delays in terms of the orders that people were expecting, but there haven't been significant factory shutdowns. That's what we found. And Margaret, you can maybe talk about your own factory.
Yeah.
Were they shut down at all?
No, look, not in this year, but I think back in May they had a bit of a time where a lot of the workers had gone back to the villages. But I was speaking to my supplier last Thursday, and he's probably, I've got an order ready for Christmas, and hopefully it's going to leave today or tomorrow. But he said they've struggled a little bit to just keep up, because, and of course, they've been getting busier because, we've been sort of directing a lot of work over there as well. And I think so, it's sort of given them a bit of a business boost as well, because people are now finding India and moving to India as well. But, he said he's been frantically busy, and it's really good. And at the moment, look, I can't complain for what they've been through. To have my order ready now, I'm quite happy, because, I would have thought at the earliest it would have been, mid-August anyway. So, yeah, no, pretty good, I think.
I think in terms of, suppliers in China, it's similar. A lot of workers did not come back. There's a lot of evolution that's happening in China in terms of factories selling their own products. And so, it's changed a lot in terms of priorities, I think, for some of the factories, but then also just the increase overall globally in purchases and people getting into e-commerce and all of that has really increased the workload of a lot of folks in China. But what I would love to ask, and I'll ask this to Margaret, since you're kind of working through some shipments right now, how, I know we're being really impacted by the increased there's container shortage and the increased shipping prices from China, which seem to be controlled by the shippers. Like they're kind of able to set their own prices. So how are you being impacted in India? Is it the same, or shipping
not anywhere near as it's as high as shipping, like the container costs I've heard, as you said before, like China's like, 30,000. I think at the moment, India's more like 10, 12,000 a container. But I mean, that still is, a huge increase. And like because I get people to send me their quotes and look at the costs. And I mean, just for people's interest, just the shipping component part, I think the cubic meter rate went from, like, mine was $57 a cubic meter 12 months ago. And it's now, the last time I looked, it was 260, and there's a new increase due again today.
Oh, wow.
So it is, like, it's a pretty bit, I mean, that's only the shipping component. It's not all the other add-ons. So it doesn't mean it's going to be that, times that, but it's still a big, big increase. And we know every fortnight they get a shipping increase. But I mean, I think it's still, the shipping lines are owned really by the same companies worldwide. So I think if they're going to price correct, and I actually was on a call with somebody last night, and they said, oh, well, should we wait? Do you think the prices will go down? And I went, yeah, I'll just get out my crystal ball. I mean, we're hoping that maybe India, because we don't have the Chinese New Year rush and all that once they get the backlog of the Christmas, shipping done, that maybe India's prices might come down in the new year. And I'm hoping, because I've just got another order that's ready. And I said to him, don't have it ready till January, please. I'm not paying for it in December.
So you're hoping, because I was just going to ask that to you ladies, is in terms of, shipping supposedly is supposed to normalize in 18 to 24 months. Globally, right? So that gives us some idea, like, we're going to be in this situation for about 2 years. And so, when we look at, I know at least the folks that I know, and myself included, we're ordering a little bit more inventory. I try to get my stuff out in August. I've still got one thing that left, I think, this week. And my shipping cost was like $6,000 for 2,000 units, which normally it's like $2,000 for shipping. So, I mean, for me to take up a part of a container, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't like $24,000, but still, it's definitely increased. And the way I was able to get a lower rate was to go through the supplier, because I think they already have reservations on some of these, in some of these containers already. So I was able to get a lower rate that way. But the question is, what are you seeing people doing? Are they thinking about raising their prices? Do we think there's space to raise prices? Or do you think they're just going to sell out? And if they can't source again, like if they can't restock for a reasonable price, do you think they'll raise their prices then? Or do you think they'll not? I mean, I was talking to my buddy Carlos the other day, and he said, some of my brands, I'm stocking them up right now. I've got a lot of inventory, but when that inventory runs out, if shipping doesn't normalize, I don't think the market's going to take necessarily an increase in price. I'm just going to let it sell out, and I'm going to move I'm going to start sourcing a lot of new products, kind of building out brands in a different way, and sourcing new products from the US and Latin America. So, trying to stay local so that you don't have a lot of shipping costs, right? But that's not easy either. You have to completely change your brand, your focus in your products. There's a lot of things that you can get in the US, for example, but you need to switch to like food products and stuff like that. So what are you seeing across the board? Are you guys seeing people are planning on raising their prices? Do we not really know?
Look, Meghla, do you want to go with that, or?
No, you go ahead, Mark.
Well, look, I think, personally, I mean, when I look at it, my sort of, if my quote comes in at what I'm thinking it's going to be, I'm probably up for, on average, over all my products, probably about $4 a product. I mean, some I could probably sustain the $2 or $3 price increase, but some, you've got to look at each niche and go, who's my competition? Is that sustainable? Can I do it or not? But I mean, I'm hoping that a few more people put their price up. But I found in one of my niches that everyone's got like a price war happening. And some people, like I've got a product that I sell for $49.95, and there's been people selling for $48. We're around the same price. Some of them are selling for $28.95, and I'm going, why? What is going on here? Like, to me, I don't understand that theory. I mean, they are Chinese suppliers. I've gone and investigated. So it seems to be whether they're trying to get rid of the other people who, they've got cheaper shipping rates. I don't understand it at all in that you know, in those niches. So I think it just depends what niche you're in, whether your niche can stand, you know, maybe $1. I said to someone the other day, maybe put it up $1 next month and then try $1 the next month and try $1 the next month and see if that slow price increase can happen. But I had a product last year that I ran out of stock at this time. So I just air freighted in a small shipment, and of course it was an extra $5 a product. So I just thought, oh, I'm still going to run out of stock the way it's going, because it was sort of going quite well. So I put my price up $5, and my price is still up $5 today, because it really didn't affect, you know, I mean, it may have, maybe I just sold more, but hey, I don't care. I'm making $5 extra. It's pretty easy money. So, you know, you don't know until you try it. I think that's, you know,
I think that's great advice. And I think the other thing that people should be thinking about is, you know, there's going to be a lot of people who keep their price low and run out of stock, and aren't going to be able to replenish for the same reliability and the same price. So, you know, just like when I used to do reselling and retail arbitrage, you kind of can play the game. You can let the special folks kind of run out of stock, and then you can raise your price and be the only one selling, you know. And I'm not saying to gouge people, you know, but you can utilize some of those tactics. Raise your price a little bit, like Margaret's saying. You never know. Raise it $1 here, raise it $1 here, and see what happens, right? See if it's still selling. And then when other people in your market run out of stock because they're selling at these rock bottom prices, you're the only one, the only game left in town, and you're selling like great at great prices. I think, you know, overall prices are going to go up. Like if we look at Ashley Furniture is one of the largest importers in the US of furniture, right? And they're one of the biggest movers of containers. And furniture has already gone up like double, 3 times. So it's like across the board, most goods, the prices are going to go up. So I would encourage people to not necessarily pay attention to that factory who isn't making any money. And it was like, you know, remember, a consumer, as long as it's not outrageous, right? And then they're seeing the value for what they're paying, they will usually pay more, and they'll actually perceive your brand and your product at a higher value simply because of the price and the presentation of it. So I love that tactic. I think it's really smart to not be afraid to just try it, right?
Yeah, no, I'm going to give it a go.
Also, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, everybody's in the same boat, right? I mean, everybody is experiencing the same type of shipping cost increases. So ultimately, you know, it has to maybe be passed on to the consumer, or you have to kind of discontinue the product altogether. And I think a lot of people are also reviewing their products to see, you know, where they can maybe, how they can reduce the production cost overall of the products. So I'm also seeing, you know, companies talking to their suppliers and trying to figure out, okay, can we make this, you know, smaller? Can we reduce the, you know, width of the wood, for example, over here? So I see a lot of people kind of talking to their suppliers to try to come up with ways to reduce the overall production cost, because yes, the shipping component we can't control, but we can control the production cost. So, you know, that's something that you could consider as well. Just talk to your supplier and see if there is a way to maybe use a different material or change the functions, features of your product to kind of get a lower price.
And not to mention, such a great point, Meghla, and not to mention also changing your packaging dimensions or the way that your product collapses down. That can save you a lot of money. We have a product that we just folded it differently. It's a foldable product, and we folded it differently, and the packaging, it reduced us, and it saves us $10 in Amazon fees per product. So it's like, geez, that made a huge difference, like really brought our margins up. And here, all we did was just try to fold it differently and, you know, put it in a poly bag a different way, where we used to roll it and it was like really long, and that, you know, put us in a different category. So yeah, there's lots of things that you could do, and we should be looking at where can we move the needle. You know, maybe we need to focus in on our advertising in a different way. Maybe we need to reduce the cost of production. Maybe we could move, you know, so moving production to India, for example, is a great opportunity. Sometimes in other countries, you know, in China, often you have to order larger quantities because it's bigger factories, stuff like that. And what I love, I've been trying to move some of my stuff to Latin America. I was talking to a factory in Mexico today, and I was first of all surprised that I could even find it. But in Mexico, or Latin America, often the problem that people have is that these factories they're not China, right? So they can only order in smaller quantities, but production is very fast, and it can be in the US in like 2 to 3 days after production, right? So you can order smaller quantities. It's perfect for micro brands, perfect for people that don't want to have to order 6,000 units and leave it sit there, right? So how is it in India? Can we order smaller quantities across the board? And how is that going for shipping? Are we able to, maybe if we can find the same or similar product in India, can we reduce costs that way?
Yeah, I think that's a great point as well. And of course, India and even other countries don't manufacture all products. So that's something that you have to consider.
Yeah.
Is this product really manufactured competitively in India or, Mexico, Latin America? But if it is manufactured competitively, and especially if the raw materials are available locally, then you might find that, yes, the prices could be more competitive. And in India, for most categories, suppliers are very flexible in terms of the MOQ. They will accept lower MOQs. For some products like apparel and textiles, the MOQs can be higher, especially if you're, customizing your fabric and you've got, custom prints and all going. But that's more of a requirement of the textile mill rather than the factory itself. Yeah.
So you find that increased textile prices, like no matter what, wherever you're you always have to buy more material, right?
Exactly. Yes. But I think even with that, you could maybe be, creative and use the same textile for different SKUs. So for example, if you're sourcing, I don't know, t-shirts, so maybe do, men's, women's, and kids t-shirts with the same, or just have more SKUs with the same fabric. That's something that you could consider as well. In India, one of the biggest advantages is that there's a lot of handloom fabrics. And handloom fabrics are literally fabrics that are, made on this manual loom, where you have people sitting at this big, huge, gigantic contraption, and they are literally weaving fabric fiber by fiber. And so for those kinds of products or those kinds of fabrics, the MOQs are much lower because they're not running on a huge machine, they're done manually. So that's a big advantage that India has. And there are literally millions of handlooms across the country. It's a very specialized industry in India. And in each state, you'll find that there are different types of weavers that produce different types of fabrics in terms of the colors that they use, the types of blends that they use, embellishments, and etc. So I think that is a big advantage that India has in terms of textiles. You can get low MOQs with handloom fabrics. That's one advantage. But overall, typically the products that Amazon sellers find competitive in India are like wooden products, metal products, glass, ceramic, leather, eco-friendly products. All of those products, typically suppliers are more flexible in the MOQ. And mostly suppliers would say MOQs around 200 to 500 pieces, but they can do even smaller orders. Like they can even do 50 pieces if you wanted to. But of course, it doesn't make sense to do 50 pieces and ship it all across, to the US. But it is possible to get low MOQs. But one other thing that suppliers do in India is MOV, which is minimum order value. So they would say, okay, you can place an order worth, let's say, $5,000 and mix and match SKUs. So that's another advantage that you have. You can maybe buy, like 3 or 4 SKUs, fewer number of units per SKU. And then that way you get more SKUs, but you're also meeting the MOV of the supplier. So they're happy as well because they're getting their MOV. Mark, do you want to add to that? Yeah.
Well, I would love to add that, Meghla gave some golden tips there, and something that you can do, of course, know what materials are popular in different countries. But if I'm selling pillowcases, cotton pillowcases, and, and maybe decorative pillowcases, and they're made of cotton or something, right? And I'm sourcing those in China right now. I can look at the different unique types of fabrics that like Meghla just described, and I can see what variations of that product that I could source in another country, and I could, you know, then move production somewhere else, simply making the same product out of a different material. Maybe I'm making coasters out of, you know, plastic or stone from China right now, and I can go to India or even Colombia. I learned Colombia does a ton of bamboo products, and I thought you could only get bamboo really in China. I didn't know, you know, so you never know. And then if you think about all the unique ways that you can make products, all the different materials you can make them out of. And then the other thing is you could also sell finished goods. So finished goods, you know, Meghla and Margaret and the team at India Sourcing sent us all these really beautiful gift boxes, and I use my little wallet every day. It's awesome. I love it. It's like my favorite thing. And I'm thinking, man, I don't even need to develop a product. I'll just sell this one. Like, think about all the different, you guys have skills. You e-commerce sellers have skills. So there is Amazon India. There's Amazon Brazil, there's Amazon Mexico. You can find finished goods in these countries, and you have skills that local people in those countries don't have to sell online. You can find those finished goods and work with manufacturers and sell them on those e-commerce platforms. And then you can also source finished goods for your own brands and expand your own brands by sourcing things from factories. And so you're growing your brand that way, but there's also lots of opportunities to even sell in those same countries, those finished goods with the skills that you've already gained. You know, Amazon, you know, e-commerce. So I love those tips. What else, Margaret? What else can they do?
Well, look, I think one of the easiest things with India is the low MOQs, because I've got 9 different SKUs. They're all different products, but they're all made out of similar materials. But so if I was in China, I'd have to order another 1,000 of each of those every order. Right. Whereas I can go, oh, this one isn't selling as much, I might only need 300. And so I can just do top-ups. But because I'm shipping them out in one shipment, my shipping costs aren't overly, you know, expensive. To do that, you know, from 5 or 6 different factories would be very costly. But because I can just combine it, so I always send a reasonable size shipment. Like, I mean, I'd never send less than, you know, 20 or 30 cubic meters in a shipment, because it becomes too costly for me to do. So I find that works really well. So if you find something that you like and develop, you know, 2 or 3 even products that you can just order, you know, 200 or 300 of each instead of 1,000 of each out of China, you're on a win-win. And then you don't get stuck with something that, you know, isn't moving as well. So I think that I'm finding, you know, with India, that's, you know, been really great for us. And we've developed a second brand, and we've done the same sort of thing. We're using similar materials, so we can, you know, once again, just add the orders together. So I think, but look, I find the biggest mistake, we get a lot of people going, oh, well, I can get 100. I'll just buy 100 of that. Well, they don't understand, look, India is great, but you need to be more organised than China. Because of the, I suppose, manufacturing, it's all handmade, or most of it is handmade. So I know if I give my supplier an order now, and I mean, I do have quite a few components in mine, so I mean, I'm probably a little bit different. They're not just doing one product, they're usually doing 8 or 9 products at a time. It takes me about 12 weeks to get that from go to woe. So the minute my shipment is leaving, like today, I've got another order, I'm working on that today to give them the next order. So you've got to just be super organised and forecast, you know, 3 months in advance. But I mean, look, it's no different if you're in retail. I mean, you don't go into a department store and that jumper, you just, you know, they made it last week, they made that last winter, or do you know what I mean? You've just got to be like any other business. You've got to get yourself organised. You can't just think, oh, I'm going to get that in 3 weeks. And I think the same is happening in China now. It's not so much the production, it's getting it in there, the shipment time and the port time. And I think that's the other benefit of going to India. We suggest most people should go into the sort of East Coast, either New York or Savannah, Jacksonville. It's less time. It's about 21 days shipping, but you still haven't got that congestion at the port. Like, so, you know, most times you're through the port in 2 or 3 days. So if you're, dealing with China, the delays. And I know there's a little bit of delay. It's getting harder to get goods out of Nova Sheva or Mumbai at the moment. It's getting busier. But I mean, we're not talking, 3 months. We're talking, maybe a couple of ships down the track. So I think there's a lot of benefits with going to India, but you have got to get yourself more organised. And obviously you've got to commit money. You can't do this on $2,000. You've got to put out some outlay to get your stock rolling that, first time around, because it's, you've always, ahead. But, that's a business, fact of business, I think. It's, the way anyone else works. And if you want to come in and try and do this on, $2,000, you're not going to succeed very well anyway. As we know, Naomi, you need to put some money into a business.
Yeah, I think it's very smart. That's a really great tip for anyone wanting to move their production from one country to another, where we're moving it from, China to India or from the US to somewhere, who knows, right? But the point is, it's not going to happen overnight. That's the longest time of your planning, is when you're finding and vetting your manufacturers and really getting a good sample and everything. So even though you might have 8 months of inventory right now because you just ordered, if you're even thinking about moving your inventory out of China and exploring India or Latin America, and as Margaret mentioned, this is not China. It's not China. You need to know your products. You need to know what you want. You need to communicate better. You might not be able to get packaging at the same factory that you get, it's not China. It's what China was, 20 years ago in some of these cases. So we have to take more time to establish that, but the payoff might be really nice. You might be able to better manage your supply chain, lower MOQs, less congestion when shipping, right? Getting things here faster. So for those people who are even considering moving out of China, I don't care if you just made a huge order, get on it. Get on it. Go talk to suppliers now. Go make sure that you have a viable resource in another country. That's what I'm working on right now. I mean, I've got a shipment leaving China right now, and I'm interviewing manufacturers and trying to, get some things lined up so that just in case one of these manufacturers doesn't work out, or I need to have packaging done, or I need to get printing done, or I need to move it to a prep center in the US to finish up the packaging and labeling and everything, I have to remember it's not China, and I can't always have everything done perfectly there. So speaking of that, in India, how is that? Can you, obviously we know it's not China, but how do we do packaging? Are there really good packaging factories as well? I know that they offer some really cool eco-friendly packaging, but are you better off having packaging and kitting products at a prep center or something? Or is that really widely available in India?
So for packaging, there are a couple of different options, and usually your supplier will be able to organize packaging for you because they would have relationships with, packaging companies. So if you've got something simple, like just maybe a brown box and you want your logo printed on it or something, it's better to just let the supplier handle it because they have, good relations with the packaging companies. But if you want to develop something unique, if you want to do something different, then you could work directly with a packaging company. And we have a couple of really good packaging companies in our network as well. And you can send them your product. Maybe sometimes people don't even know what kind of packaging they need for their product. So you could send a sample of the product to the packaging company and then get on a call with them and then just have a discussion about what you want. And, they could advise you on what best way to package that product or what kind of box to produce. A lot of the packaging companies, typically they've been focused on retail. So you just have to keep that in mind, that maybe these packaging companies have more retail packaging background, but increasingly we are finding more and more companies also, doing e-commerce packaging. And so they understand that the product needs to be, secure, and the packaging needs to be as small as possible because you're, ending up with more shipping costs and more storage costs. Because e-commerce is growing so rapidly in India, there's a lot of focus on these things as well. So, packaging companies, because they're catering usually to the domestic market as well, they understand the needs of e-commerce, sellers. So there are huge packaging companies and printing companies too. There's one printing packaging company that we have in our network, and they've got like advanced machines from Germany and, you know, really high volume printing and all that they do. At the same time, they also cater to smaller orders. That's something that I find quite interesting with many companies, because with packaging, you know, a lot of times the higher volumes you source, the lower your per price is for the packaging. But a lot of suppliers are quite flexible in terms of the MOQs, even for packaging. Like, we've negotiated with packaging companies that for our community, they can, you know, do as few as 500 pieces per box, even for customized boxes. So yeah, I mean, they're quite flexible, and you'll find all types of packaging, paper, cardboard, cough flute, and a lot of eco-friendly options, of course. So we've got organic cotton bags or jute bags. What else, Mark? Do you have anything else to add?
Well, I think we've got a supplier who started doing cornstarch poly bags, which we think is really quite unique, because that means instead of, you know, having a plastic bag, it's made of cornstarch. So obviously it's biodegradable, and in 12 months it's gone. So I think, you know, those options are really good for people. And I think your packaging tends to be a little bit more eco-friendly. Like, I know my manufacturer hardly uses any plastic. Most of my products are wrapped in like nice brown tissuey paper and things like that. So you don't find when you get your product, it's full of polystyrene and, you know, bubble wrap and all that. It's very, very few products. Certain products that obviously have to protect certain things, but in general, most of the products are done more eco-friendly. And look, I think the labor cost in India is so much more cost effective than, to me, I wouldn't consider shipping anything to the US from America and packaging it, because of the labor cost is just so ridiculous. And look, packaging I find is quite reasonable. I mean, we have all our packages are like gift box type packages, and they're very, very reasonably priced. And once again, you know, I can do, because I've been using the same supplier and they know me, they'll do me, you know, 200 or 300 boxes if I've just got a small top-up order in one of my products. So, you know, I've still got boxes over in China somewhere because they made me get 2,000 or something, and I only needed 1,000. So, you know, like, you don't have that wastage at all. So, you know, you might, I think if,
oh, did she freeze?
Did we lose Margaret? Oh no.
Mark, are you there?
Well, she still looks great, even frozen. Well,
yeah, I think the other thing about packaging that we found is that, you know, because there's such a huge domestic market in India, there's, you know, need for products, and a lot of products that are manufactured in India by factories are actually for the domestic market. So there is a fairly developed domestic manufacturing industry. Maybe these suppliers are not familiar with export markets. So for packaging, a lot of the actual products, the packaging materials are actually not exported directly. They're supplied to manufacturers who then export the product, right? So for packaging, even if you find a domestic company that, you know, a small company in a small city that's doing that's printing packaging and boxes for the local market, you know, even that could work out for you for exports, because for products you need an export focused company because they need to understand your quality standards and all of those things. Packaging is kind of different. It's a box. It doesn't really, you know, have any special requirements for exports versus selling in the domestic market.
Yeah, I think it's so great to hear that that there are so many packaging options, and it's a good reminder for people to don't be afraid to ask your supplier, and to keep that in mind, you know, what you're looking for, but also, you know, even if you're not in China, don't be afraid to ask your supplier, because this is usually not their first rodeo. This is not the first time that they've created a product or had someone order a product from them. And yeah, it's really smart. So I love it. Well, I mean, before we wrap up today, I would love to hear we always ask, you know, what is a book that you've read lately or something that you're listening to that is keeping you motivated? You have any really good things that you've been into lately?
Gosh, let me try to think. Yeah, not really. I mean, I've just been listening to a lot of different podcasts in the industry, and your podcast and the webinars that you do. Not anything in particular. I mean, I can think of, Ecom Crew is one of my favorite podcasts. I don't know if you know Mike Jackness. I think you do, right? You met him in Hong Kong. So yeah,
Yeah.
he's
Well,
so
I will
he's
have to check out
yeah.
Ecom Career. I don't know if I've listened to that one yet.
Oh,
I'll definitely have to check it out.
yes, definitely do that. They've got a great blog and really good podcast as well, ecomcrew.com. So that's one of my favorites. But other than that, no, I have not been reading any books or anything. It's just there's just so much going on.
Yeah, I mean, you went from having the India sourcing trip to going and doing these virtual India sourcing sessions, which were so neat because we got to meet all these different suppliers and check things out. And then you launched the India Sourcing Network, which is so neat, So tell us a little bit more about the India Sourcing Network and what we can expect to find there.
Yes, definitely. This is so exciting. I mean, this whole the whole concept has just evolved over the last year. We didn't plan on launching a website as such, but it's just like one thing led to another. And then we had so much content. We're like, okay, we need a home for all of this content. We need to organize everything. So the idea behind India Sourcing Network is to provide Amazon e-commerce sellers everything they need to source products from India. And we realized that there are a lot of different sources to find information about China, but there was nothing really about India. And, we are probably the only group in the e-commerce space, so to speak, to provide this kind of information. And so on the network, on the website, what you can find is, first of all, vetted suppliers and service providers. So whether you're looking for a sourcing agent or freight forwarder, quality control, lawyer, packaging companies, and any kind of service that you might need when you're sourcing from India, we've got vetted service providers. Then secondly, we've got vetted suppliers. And this is really important for us because we realize that there's so many suppliers out there on different platforms or people just go Google, but there are also companies that are maybe domestic focused or, bad actors and who are just trying to take people for a ride. So we really emphasize on vetting companies, and we check that they are legitimate companies, that they are manufacturers, and that they're exporters. Those are the three things that we check for all companies that we have on the website. So people can source with confidence that these suppliers know the requirements of overseas markets. And then the third thing that we're focusing on is education, because again, there's so much information about China, but not much about India. So we've got a blog, we've got a free ebook that we give to anybody anybody who's just thinking about sourcing from India and doesn't know if India is right for them. So this ebook gives an overview of how to source from India, what product categories are competitive, how to find suppliers, how to place orders, logistics, etc. And then recently we've started an India sourcing workshop, which is just so exciting. It's a 3-day workshop that we conduct live over a period of 3 weeks. And we host live sessions every weekend. And we're just basically going through the A to Z of sourcing from India and giving people, like almost like a course on how to source from India. So yeah,
it's like a India sourcing trip in the kind of the weekend, just like, oh, I'm gonna discover this today and learn this today. And when you're done with it, then you kind of have a better idea of how to actually hit the ground running, either virtually or in person eventually, we hope. Amazing. It's really great. And the website for India Sourcing Network is
indiasourcing.net.
indiasourcing.net. Okay,
Yes.
Perfect. Well, I know everybody's going to go check it out. I mean, such great information. And it's great to hear that India is still a viable option for sourcing, even throughout this pandemic, as well as even, shipping prices and MOQs being a little smaller. And then there's some great resources for people to learn. I think we covered a lot today, and it's great to hear from you guys what you're working on in your businesses and what you're planning on doing in this next, 6 months here that is going to be just the craziest Q4 ever. I'm just really wondering what is going to happen next. It's like, it's been so crazy. It's like, geez, what could possibly, would we ever have thought of what would we had like the crazy hornets, and then we had like the fires in Australia, and we had then COVID hit, and it was like, what is going to happen next, right? At some point, there's things have got to turn around and start going the other way, right?
I know, it sure has been a very eventful last 18 months or so.
But we have to think about, had we not, I'm not going to say I'm thankful for COVID, but had we not had COVID, we might not have indiasourcing.net. We
Absolutely,
might not
yes.
have, some of the relationships that we built during this time period has been really, really just amazing. And the different things, the way we pivoted in our businesses, I think all of our businesses have gotten more resilient. And we have contingency plans now that we would have never had before. So hey, despite all that, I think it's not so bad. So, well, Meghla, I so appreciate you being here with us today, and Margaret. We lost Margaret somewhere there. We'll have to follow up with Margaret, make sure she's okay.
I think she's lost her internet. She just messaged me.
Oh, did she? Okay. Worldwide internet outages. What's next? But yes, thank you so much for being here, Meghla. And thank you everyone for listening. Make sure you guys rate, review, and subscribe. We love hearing from you, and definitely go out and check out indiasourcing.net. And Meghla, last but not least, did you want to plug anything else? Anything else that people need to check out, or any way they need to contact you?
I think check out our Facebook group. We share a lot of good info there. We do webinars every week, and we have a lot of resources. So search for Sourcing from India on Facebook and join the Facebook group.
I love it. Sourcing from India on Facebook. Get in there. I'm in there. It's a good group. I love it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time, next Tuesday on the Seller Roundtable. Bye.
Bye.